I hope we are following each other. We're thinking together, right? Is this a problem at all to any of us? Or the speaker is imposing the problem onto you? We have so many problems. I don't know why we have so many problems, but don't let's add another problem to already innumerable other problems. This is, I think, a very serious question which we have to inquire together. If you observe your own activity, one's own activity, you will find more and more that the brain functions only in a way, the brain operates only very partially, very, very little. And therefore, our energy becomes less and less and less as we grow older. Biologically, physically, when we are young, we are full of this vitality. But as we get educated, follows a livelihood, you need specialization. That brain becomes small, narrow, limited, and therefore the energy becomes less and less and less. But it has its own vitality, right? So we are asking whether that brain, though it may have to have certain form of specialization, not necessarily religious, because that's superstition, we can put all that out. Whether, suppose I'm a surgeon, I have to specialize. Whether in spite of that, the brain can operate wholly. It can operate only wholly, completely, with all the tremendous vitality of million years behind it, only when it is completely free. I hope is this somewhat, are we meeting each other? As a question, we are going to inquire whether the brain can ever be totally free, in spite of the specialization, which is necessary for a livelihood. And it may not be necessary if the computer takes over. It won't take over surgery, obviously. It won't take over the feeling of beauty. Looking at the evening stars, the Orion and the Pleiades and so on. But it may take over other functions altogether, right? So, can the human brain be totally free? You understand me? Without any form of attachment. Because attachment of any kind, physical, attachment to certain belief, experience, and so on, can the brain be so completely free? Oh Lord. If the brain cannot be so totally free, it will begin to deteriorate. Because when it is occupied with problems with specialization, livelihood, and so on, it's active. The brain is active. But when the computer takes over this activity, the brain will have less and less problems, and therefore gradually deteriorate. Right? This is happening. It's not something in the future. It's actually happening now when you observe one's own activity. Right? So the question is, we have to find an answer to whether the brain can be totally free and therefore function altogether, not partially. Right? And whether our consciousness, with its content, basically fear, the pursuit of pleasure, and all the implications of that, and grief, pain, sorrow, being hurt inwardly, and so on. That's the basic content of one's consciousness. Right? You may have other forms of consciousness, group consciousness, racial consciousness, national consciousness, the consciousness of a particular group, the consciousness of the Catholic group, the Hindu group, and so on, so on. But basically, the consciousness with its content is fear, pleasure, pursuit of pleasure, pain, sorrow, death. Right? This is the central content of our consciousness. Right? We are thinking together, please. Right? We are thinking together, examining together. The speaker is not laying down anything. We are together observing the whole phenomenon of existence, human existence. That's our existence. As we pointed out earlier, we are mankind. Because our consciousness, whether it is a Christian living in the Western world, or in the Middle East, or in the Asiatic world, that consciousness its content is basically fear, pursuit of pleasure, pain, hurt, sorrow, and the never-ending burden of all this. Right? So our consciousness is not personal, mine. This is very difficult to accept because we have been so conditioned, so educated that we resist this actuality, which means we are not individuals at all. We are the whole of mankind. It's not a romantic idea. It is not a philosophical concept. It is not absolutely an ideal. It is, if one examines it closely, it is a fact. So we're going to together find out whether the brain can be free from the content of its consciousness, right? Sirs, why do you listen?